It's recording.
Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk at the Chemists Without Borders for Water Symposium. I will be talking on the chemistry in Cameroon, advancing laboratory sciences. Today's presentation will be about a brief introduction about AIDSfreeAFRICA, which is the nonprofit organization that I run. And we will be talking about quality control of drugs and also about diagnostic laboratory that we have in Malaria in Yaoundé. And then I will invite you to think about how you can contribute to the scientific endeavor in Cameroon. So, first of all, when you run a nonprofit organization, you have many heads, and I worked for the pharmaceutical industry as a research scientist in inhalable insulin. And when I quit my job to go and get something that has a little bit more challenging aspects, I really got myself into something. So I founded AIDSfreeAFRICA, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. And when you have a nonprofit organization, you need a board of directors. And the people here in these pictures, on the left, of course, is myself. And then is Dr. Elliot Bay, my co-founder of AIDSfreeAFRICA. Then we have Dr. Maimouna. Dr. Maimouna is from Nigeria, and she is a medical doctor. We eventually added a medical doctor to the board because in Cameroon, when you have a PhD, a doctor title, people think you are a medical doctor because that's what they know. A doctor is a medical doctor. So I explained to them I'm a chemist, which really in their field is a better translation is if I call myself a pharmacist. So when I say a pharmacist, then their minds finally go towards drugs, which is what we want to do, right? I haven't said that, but the mission of AIDSfreeAFRICA is to help people in sub-Saharan Africa to produce, access, and quality control drugs. That is our mission. And so we kind of suckered into the medical field all the time, and this is why Dr. Maimouna is a really good help. We also have Sherry on the board, who is responsible for the website and the public relations. Of course, we have a lot of volunteers. No nonprofit can live without volunteers, and we're very thankful to have them. They do all sorts of aspects, especially, trying to help me with my mobile phone, which I can't really get used to. So I work in Cameroon. You see in the picture, Cameroon is just above the equator. It is the furthest east country in West Africa. So to our west is Nigeria, and to the east is Chad, the Congo, and the Central African Republic. And in the south, we have Gabon. So we're surrounded by quite a few countries, and we have a lot of borders. The country has sort of like a triangular shape, which is really very steep and long. It takes quite some time to travel from the south to the north. Cameroon is the size of California. We're right now in California, of course, so this is the size of the country, but there are only about 24 million people, so the population is much smaller. But it is growing fast. The birth rate is quite high. There are 6 to 9 children per woman, generally 6 live births and about 9 total. So the capital is Yaoundé, and you will hear about the city again when I keep talking, because we moved our headquarters to the capital like a couple of years ago. So we're operating now out of Yaoundé. Cameroon is very pretty. As you can see here in this picture, you have Mount Cameroon, which is an active volcanic mountain that goes straight from the ocean all the way up, 4,096 meters. And once a year in February, when the mountain is clear, we have an international event that is called the Run on the Mountain. And it is really, people come from all over the world and they run up the mountain and run back down, and it takes about 18 hours. So, you know, and making it through these elevation changes, that is quite an act to do. In my next life, when I come back and I'm younger, I will try it. I would love to do it, but I know I can't. So the next picture you see, there's a little bit of coastline and a little one-tree boat. You see that Cameroon is very green, especially in the rainy season. But altogether, they're calling Cameroon like Africa in miniature. And they're saying this because we have all the climate zones. In the north, we're dipping into the Sahara Desert. In the south, we have the tropic. In the east, we have savanna. And there are a few other things in between that I'm not really familiar with. But the landscape changes when you move around the country. In the upper left corner, that little girl is Rolande Hodel. She has my last name because the mother thought that Hodel is my first name. Because in Cameroon, I call myself Dr. Rolande. So they automatically assume that that Hodel has to be the first name. So the little girl is now Rolande Hodel, and then followed by her African names, which is kind of cute anyway. The next picture is from Bamenda, which is the town where I spent most of my time in those 14 years that I've been in Cameroon. And the young people you see in the picture are our volunteers, and they're wonderful. This particular group is a group, they call themselves the Mandela Voluntary Foundation. And it's a group of young people who actually really understand the word volunteering like we do, that you do help out without being paid. Because most Cameroonians think of volunteering more like what we think of when you get a new job the first 3 months when you're still on probation. They just assume we should pay them and we should hire them, very soon. So that always takes quite some discussion to clear up, to make sure there are not too many misunderstandings. But they're wonderful young people, and we love to work with them. The next picture shows a part of Yaoundé, which is the part where we moved to and where we moved the headquarters of AIDSfreeAFRICA. It is called Mbobedi, as the locals pronounces, or Mbobeti when you use the official way. It's District 6 in Yaoundé, and we got there because the mayor of Yaoundé really likes our malaria program, and he invited us and said, we need this program in District 6. We have about 300,000 people living in this area, and to be honest, I think there are actually much more because District 6 has a large English-speaking population. I forgot to say, Cameroon is bilingual. So you have the English-speaking population, which is the minority, and the French-speaking population. And so this area in Mbobedi, a lot of the English-speaking population moved there. And when you look at this picture, you see the mountain coming up like this. It looks kind of like Bamenda. For me, it reminds me of Bamenda and makes me quite happy. These steep mountainsides, because Bamenda is very volcanic, so you have these from the crater, the leftover walls. So we're quite happy there. We moved into a school that is called Mokala, and I think that the picture comes later. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So this is Yaoundé. In 2005, when I first came to Cameroon, I was introduced to a group of young people who had the goal to produce drugs. And of course, with our mission to help them to produce drugs, it was perfect. We worked with these young people for 3 years, and it was really, at that time, my full-time job. I was doing nothing else but working with this group of people. And the factory that you see here in the picture is the building that they had, and what we did is we helped them to get the money to pour in the concrete floors. But nothing happened afterwards. They were never able to get either the permissions from the government or to get more money or even to agree with each other, to proceed. They were talking and trying, but to this day, they still tell me, they said, no, doctor, we will produce drugs. Don't worry, we will produce, God will help us. Well, so far God hasn't helped them because the building is still sitting there. And as you know, if you have a building empty sitting around, it's not good for the structure of the building, right? So I'm more worried that they're losing the building on top of it. But it was for us a really learned experience, right? I learned a lot, and I hope they learned a lot from us. So it was a really great time that I had those first 3 years. So then fast forward, in the first 10 years, I consulted 7 startup companies. So after this really quite romantic 3-year life with these youngsters, there came several more companies and sort of like the pattern repeated itself, so it becomes, kind of like more normal. But eventually in 2011, Sinpharm started full-scale drug production. And I was sitting there saying, you're producing drugs, my job is done, I should go home and retire. And they said, no, doctor, you cannot leave us. We have so much more to do. I said, okay, what are we going to do? Because, when you go in a third world country and you work with people in a different culture, different language, different habits, and it's really so different from how we live, that I always, and to this day, I go there and I said, okay, what is it you have? What is it you want? What is it what works? What is it that doesn't work? And what is it? What is that one thing that if we put this in place, everything else will function? It's more like a switch, And I love those situations when I can put these pieces together that are there. Sometimes it's really just a question of putting these pieces together in the right order. And sometimes we just have to add another piece and it all works, right? This is sort of like the real star moments that I love. And when I'm the happiest in my job. But the company, Sinpharm, started production. They showed me the company. They were so proud. We were able to ship $500,000 worth of production equipment that someone in New Jersey donated to us. And it was fascinating because whatever the company did not want it or needed, the University of Boya wanted it. So we brought everything to the company and we said, okay, university, come with a truck and just come and pick up whatever is there. So we satisfied 2 places in one shipment, which was great. But knowing from, consulting all these companies, I knew the structures, how the Cameroonians approach drug production, and I knew the pitfalls. And I knew that they were not quite listening to me, and they were doing their thing. They were doing their thing, no matter what I was saying. So I gave the company 5 years. I thought for 5 years they will produce, and any longer than this would be really just a miracle. Well, the company produced for 2.5 years. And it was sad when after 2.5 years, they just collapsed. They ran out of money. There were issues with the port, the customs, to get shipments in at the right time. The infrastructure is so weak. It is so weak. It is so difficult for these companies to establish and grow and run their business. There is just so many traps they can fall into. So the company was sitting there for a couple of years, and it was eventually bought by a Tunisian company. So it is now in the hands of a foreign country, Tunisia. And because of that situation, we have no more information. We don't really know what's happening because the foreign companies, they don't really consider AIDSfreeAFRICA as anything that they just go home to Tunis and they have their consultants and their people and they listen to them. So, but in any case, so there is now Sinpharm that belongs to Tunisia, and then there is another company that was built by a company in India, by Strides. Strides from India built a big company into Douala, into the same town, and runs it. We have a little bit more information about that company because Isa Hamachodat, was the production manager of Sinfarm, is now the production manager with Strides in Douala. So once in a while I call Isa and I said, Isa, how's it going? You know, give me the inside scoop. So once in a while we kind of sit there and we gossip a little bit about who's producing what and what is going and so on. But it is going. So we sit there as a board, as a non-profit, we said, so what is our goal now, right? They're producing. And we decided that it is very important to help them to sort of broaden the base, because we know from consulting these 7 companies that what was always missing was the bottom line infrastructure, the stuff that here in the United States we have and we take for granted. We build companies here in this country knowing this infrastructure is there. You know, if you need something, you just call and they FedEx it and you have it in less than 24 hours, right? That is the big problem in Cameroon. Supply chain management is literally not there. Management is not even taught in the schools in Cameroon. So it's a very, there are a lot of weak points. So we pushed into the universities and even now, even further into the high schools. So we signed a 10-year contract with IRAD. IRAD is the Institute of Agricultural Research for Development in Yaoundé. It is the government's premier research institution. So it's a government thing like our NIH or something, right? And you would think, yeah, that, you know, there are resources, that there are things. So we had a really good time. This is Dr. Ndeye and Dr. Achu. We signed the papers. It was a big deal. We took pictures and everything, so we were all happy. And they showed us the laboratories. They showed us the facilities. And this here is a picture, a typical picture. They have a little bit of glassware. They have a little bit of things. And they told me that they have 35 pieces of equipment. I said, okay. And is it working? Not really. I said, well, how many of them? None of them is working. And I said, what's wrong with it? Well, we sent pictures to Elliot at home, and Elliot went and checked out the model numbers. He said, Doctor, the equipment is so old, we can't even get spare parts to it. There was some equipment that was not that old, but when I asked again, they said, well, the electricity just crashed into it. They have no protection, they have no grounding, they have no deflection for thunder. So if the thunder crashes into the building, all the light bulbs blow, the motherboard is shut. And I told him, I said, if your motherboard is shut, there is nothing I can do. I can't fix it. You know, it's finished. So this picture here is the laboratory that they gave us and that we want to build and, you know, upgrade into our laboratory to do specifically quality control for drugs. We want to train people how to do quality control of drugs. Because the question is always, are these the wrong drugs that I prescribe to my patient, or are these drugs degraded? Is this you know, is that just, what's the problem? This laboratory has the problem that, again, the electricity is not grounded. In the back is a water leak, there's water rushing down. The pipes are leaking, the water pipes are so old that they're leaking water. The windows have cracks and holes in them. They're literally parts of the glass missing, so the dust and everything comes in. So the building has to be fixed, and has to be fixed by the government because it's their building. And I've told this, like the German GIZ, the Gemeinde for International Zusammenarbeit, they are really great in giving equipment. But I told him, I said, you have to look where you're giving this equipment to. Because in Yaoundé, at IRAD, they just had gotten a big isoplasma coupling, whatever, I forgot the name of the instrument. But it's huge and it's great. It fits what they need, you know, for soil analysis. But it's sitting in a room that's not air conditioning, that is dusty, that is too warm. And again, the electricity is not grounded. You know, the first big storm that hits it is going to hit it. And I told him, I said, guys, you have to fix that room up before you switch on this machine. Doctor, we are the technicians. This is the decision of the administrators. True, right? It's the other part of the infrastructure. So, in any case, I work with the technician, and here you see a few of them. I was training them. That was our agreement, that we would train them. And they were asking for me to teach them on Kjeldahl nitrogen analysis. That's a nitrogen analysis of proteins. And if you remember, they do agricultural research and animal feed. So they're interested in how much protein do we give to the animals, how much protein is in the milk of the goats and the cows. So Kjeldahl analysis is something they do routinely. And here's the interesting part. I found that high school students in Cameroon are better trained theoretically in chemistry than my college students in New York. They also, here at IRAD, know how to do the laboratory work that they're supposed to do. What they don't know is the connection between the theory and the practical things. So why do you use boric acid at the Kjeldahl analysis? Why do you use this amount of water at that point? And why is that important? So they were really fascinated when I pointed out all these connections to them, So they say, oh yeah, we know this, but we just don't know how this goes together. And I was so glad because I had really no idea on what level I was supposed to give them the lecture, right? So they then asked for a lecture on bomb calorimetry, which is another thing they do routinely, and we did that, and it worked out well. So the next step is, coming up soon. So let me switch a little bit the topic. This was now kind of like the chemistry laboratory, right? Now we're talking more about hospital type, diagnostic, medical diagnostic laboratory. And how we got to this is in 2011, I had malaria. You go to Africa, you're bound to eventually get malaria, right? Prophylaxis on that, it just doesn't work always. So I had malaria, and I was bored lying in my hospital bed, and there were a lot of mosquitoes around. And at night, there was no mosquito net, and I was not happy. And my colleagues, my co-workers, my Cameroonians, they came rushing from the village. And I was a little surprised because I said, it's just malaria, you take your drug, you take your medicine, and you survive the whole thing. What I didn't realize is when you're in a hospital in Cameroon, someone has to feed you. There is no one who gives you food. There is no service. There is a doctor who looks at you once a day, and there's a nurse who gives you your drugs, but that's it. So any other help you need, you have a family member or someone. So luckily the guys came and took care of me. And Polycarp even stayed overnight. And in the evening I said, Polycarp, go in my house, get my mosquito net from my bed and put it over me. This is impossible. So he did that, but then he started crying. I said, oh doctor, the mosquitoes are biting me. And I'm kind of like, I didn't have another mosquito net, right? I felt bad for him. But what really happened is that within a week, both of my colleagues came down with malaria. It is literally, and they don't understand this. I got this in conversations. Our idea to sort of like put mosquito screens in windows, right? Because we hate having mosquitoes in the house, even if they don't have malaria, is really something that doesn't occur to them. They don't understand that mosquitoes don't have malaria to begin with. They just think they have malaria, they bring malaria. But a mosquito literally has to pick up the plasmodium from someone who has plasmodium in their blood to pass it on. So if you want to break the chain, you have to break the chain somewhere where the malaria patient is. So, that's why we put people in quarantine. And that concept is really, they wouldn't, here for this picture, they wouldn't even allow me to use the word isolation. They said, no, doctor, this is too much. This is too much. I said, what do you want me to call it? I'll call it separation. It's okay. We'll call it separation. that's why you see the picture with the person on that side and the mosquitoes on this side and the screen in the middle, right? I said, okay, fine. So I made up this malaria-free zone program, and it became so popular. It is easy to do. You just take these expired mosquito nets, cut them into places, put them in the windows. So we can now finally use young people who have very little education and train them very easily to do this, and it's very easy replicated. We've tried it in several villages. Of course, we have this one problem. The people now come to me and they say, but doctor, you're AIDSfreeAFRICA. Why do you do malaria? I can't, like, why not, right? But I had to find a more sophisticated answer, and really, it didn't take me long. There is research done on Lake Kisumu in Kenya, because there's a huge prevalence of malaria. And it is very clear from several studies that we have now is that malaria and HIV/AIDS, they basically support each other in a negative way, right? You have malaria, you get easier HIV/AIDS. You have AIDS, you get malaria. And in principle, any sexually transmitted disease will increase your chances to get HIV/AIDS. Any untreated disease, because your immune system is weakened, it just, AIDS comes in and malaria comes in. So in this picture, you see the overlap. You have a certain percentage. Like here, we have 3.8% HIV/AIDS, and that's a low number. When we test people, we test them much higher than that. And the malaria is 18.4%. By the way, malaria still to this day kills much more people than HIV/AIDS, right? I mean, that has never changed. So we think that, and the AIDS Foundation, they always do, that's why the Global Fund has AIDS, malaria, and TB all in one. These sicknesses are just, they have to, it would be very artificial just to keep them separated. So we run the malaria program in Yaoundé because the mayor of Yaoundé invited us to come specifically and to do this work. And we moved in the school here, this is called Mukala. That is in an area within Yaoundé, that is the kind of English-speaking area of the French-speaking Yaoundé, and which makes me kind of happy to, when you work in a nonprofit, you have to sort of make sure that you're gonna have to take care of yourself, right? Because the Cameroonians, they always think I'm beyond, I have everything, I can get everything, I don't need anything. We still need things. We're people, right? And I need my beer and my rest and my sleeping. I need to play with the kids, which makes me happy, right? And so you have to take care of yourself when you run a nonprofit. So just to wrap it up, this is a few pictures where our youngsters are cutting the mosquito nets into pieces and putting them into the windows. And then what happened is, this is the nice thing about the internet, someone saw on our website there is a sentence that says, in the rainy season in the north of Cameroon, we have 180,000 malaria cases within 3 months, and 60,000 of them died. And he said, my God, this is really horrible. So he wrote me and he said he would donate me a fluorescent microscope for the diagnostics of malaria. And I did not believe it. I thought it was kind of like the sweepstake, you're almost already a millionaire. So I just wrote him back and I said, sure, knock yourself out and send me a microscope, right? What the hell? He sent me a microscope, right? There it is. I mean, it's so fancy, nobody in Cameroon has it. I called my biggest doctor that I know that could have had it because he has a lot of equipment, and he said he had it, but I didn't believe him. Just because people in Cameroon tell you something, don't believe it. So I went there. I said, where's the microscope? Went to the laboratory, talked to the technician. The technician says, yeah, doctor, we were supposed to get one like this, but they don't have it. So we did a training. We have this little laboratory, in the school, And we trained 12 people, and one of them was the head microscopist of the Louis Pasteur Institute, which is called Central Pasteur in Cameroon. And the guy was right away, he was like, I want this thing, can I have it? I said, hey, you can't have it, it's mine. But right now he actually has it because they're supposed to run a validation for us. We realized that if we really want to promote this microscope in the country, we have to get for the government a validation study that says, yes, this microscope is good, better, or whatever. And Central Pasteur is the place to do that. So that's great. So, my final sentence. What I want you in the audience to think about is where you can see yourself plugged into this whole thing, right? We need equipment. Even things, you know, the simple things we have in a high school laboratory. UV visible pH meters, you know, centrifuges, lab scales, pipettes, some equipment. Come with the equipment. Come to Cameroon. Teach our youngsters for a couple of weeks. Leave the equipment behind before you go home. And then when you go home, plan on coming back, you know, for more. So we would really like to have, our focus right now is really to get laboratories into schools because they do a good job teaching chemistry, but they are very weak in terms of hands-on real-life chemistry, and the students need that. There's no doubt about that. So thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me for this talk. This was really a pleasure to talking to you, and please ask questions, and thank you.